And welcome, everybody. Another lovely Sunday, another respect. Hope you all had a great week. I know I did. So that's a wonderful thing. And we're all still here to talk about it. So that's another great thing. So tonight, I've got some special guests with me. We're going to be sitting and talking more about common law and about taking back control of our local governments. Because, as the good general would say, local action is national impact. And that's very, very important. This whole thing isn't going to work unless we go and we start to take control back from the cabal and try and get everything back to normal and back to the way that it should be. So our republic is a republic by the people and of the people yet again. So without further ado, I want to bring on my very, very special guests, soon to be, hopefully, governor of the state of California, my good buddy Louis Herms, and the wonderful Tom Sykes, who is the chair of the Sarasota County Jural Assembly. So welcome, everybody. Why are we on 4? There we go.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
Here we go. How you guys doing tonight?
Fantastic. Thank you.
I am totally blissed out. I am wonderful day.
Better blissed than blistered. Excellent. I'm glad you guys are doing well. So let's talk a little bit about all this stuff. We've had both of you on before talking about, Tom talking specifically about getting back to common law, and Louis talking about the things that he would do in the state of California to try and get that absolutely libtarded state back to a sense of normalcy. So, Louis, let's start with you because you've been doing a lot of work recently trying to wake people up a little bit, not so much red pill them, but really slap them across the face with a wet towel and let them know what's going on. Give us an idea of what we can do here and, exactly what kind of things you're putting forth in your campaign and for the state of California.
Sure. Well, great to be here. How do we say this? The running away from the constitutional republic in general is exactly why we're here today. Because we have been for hundreds of years, in my opinion, some people would say less, hundreds of years, the constitutional republic, the principles thereof have been completely manipulated in order to feed the mechanism that I call the swamp, the deep state. I call them the parasites. So the way the parasites have taken control is by eroding away at our constitutional principles, as if we were the frog in the pot, slow enough that we may not recognize it until big events like 9/11 happened, and then you had the Patriot Act. That was a turn up of the temperature like that. And there's been several of those, 1913, 1933, so on and so forth, 1871. I mean, there's certain years where the temperature jumped significantly, but generally it was a slow rise of temperature until suddenly our constitutional republic is completely unrecognizable. So I had no willingness to run for governor of California. One is because the elections are stolen, and without a free and fair real election, there's no way that we could even implement these principles that I'm talking about, because the guy that wants to implement them would never have a chance, because it's a selection process, not an election process. That being said, what happened is over the last few months, several people were saying, Louis, could you run? Could you run? Could you run? And I'm like, no, not under our corrupt election system. Well, I got a little heads up that there may be some processes in process to not only fix that, but then I started to look at the candidates, the conservative candidates, and they were avoiding some major issues, and which really frustrated me. Let's say I call it the big lie number one, that human trafficking and child trafficking is not even an issue in California. Big lie number two, that election fraud is fake. And big lie number three, the swamp is a hoax. So just those things alone should have been on the top of the list, but they weren't even in the top 10 when you did searches on what are the candidates talking about. And I said, wow, somebody at least has to get in there and expose these things. So as a truth teller, I've decided to throw my hat in the ring. But Mark, you probably figured out in the short time that you've known me, if I do something, I take it extraordinarily serious, and I work very, very hard, and I've been traveling places, talking to the right people, coordinating efforts, putting together teams. I just added somebody today, somebody I respect humongously, to be part of my investigative team to investigate issues in California that I'm going to expose during the candidacy. So these are some real world issues. And I guess because of it, I've already been called the anti-politician. Well, I'm also considered the we the people guy. So I'll take both of those. Those are badge of honors. I'll take them. And frankly, and Tom probably knows about this, from a constitutional standpoint, the state constitution in California is actually one of the strongest by far constitutions in the whole country. Yet you wouldn't know it because they have falsified the elections. So you never get a chance to actually use the Constitution, and they manipulate it because the voters have a lot more power in this state than other states. But when you're faking the vote, you think the voters are voting for issues that they're not voting for. It's disgusting. So we have a lot of work to do here. I'm excited, and we're not naive to understand that this is an uphill battle, but I actually embrace being the underdog.
As well you should, because when I looked and had this discussion with you before your announcement, I looked at the other people who were running. Other than really one person, they were all either business people, big business people, or politicians. And the last thing California needs, more big business people or politicians, because they ain't going to get anywhere that way. So now, Tom, we've been doing a lot of stuff together and dealing with a lot of things on this topic of getting people to take back control of their counties, and specifically with the Sarasota County Jural Assembly. You just recently made a filing that's kind of one of a kind so far in this country in regard to trying to take some control back and go against the powers that be. So I want to fill the people in on that a little bit.
Okay, well, thanks, Mark. And Louis, my hat is off to you. And my comment about hearing what you're doing and understanding a little bit about you from what I did on a background check. You're not crazy.
Maybe
Well, maybe a little reckless on yourself, taking care of yourself. But, other than that, just, hopefully we won't have to worry about those midnight disappearances that we see so readily in a lot of the higher echelons, particularly around the Clinton camp. But, I don't want to go into that at all. So my hat's off to you. I want you to know that you are special because it takes a special person to stand up and to be able to put forth what is true and take the ridicule that you're getting. And what I'm finding right now is that we keep talking about how many people are so involved in what's going on. And I'm a little bit on the other side of that. I'm seeing people that are not stepping up and understanding. And I ask people, and I'm starting to ask people when I meet them, when you do the Pledge of Allegiance, what type of government do you pledge to? Do you pledge to a democracy? And this whole thing has been, and you're right, it's gone back for centuries where they slowly, gradually, I use it, the frog in the boiling water, they just keep turning and turning and turning, and everything you take away. Well, we are going back to the Constitution law in Florida, and we're going to go under two main articles: the United States Constitution and the Florida Constitution. And we just filed with our Attorney General an issue with our Sarasota County Commissioners here in Sarasota, because we approached them starting 2 years ago about the water content and the safe water that we don't have to drink in Sarasota. And we get the same feedback from the Sarasota Working Group that they're following the Safe Drinking Water Act recommendations as been enforced by the EPA. Well, the EPA is just another three-letter agency that is just as bad as the CIA, the FBI, and everything else. They have completely subverted the interior of that. And the EPA is not concerned about the protection of the people in this country at all. And I've got proof of that because I can go back and show you in 1945 when they changed the EPA maximum level of content, safe level, to 4.0 instead of less than that. It's a neurotoxin. It's all over the country. It has to be out of the water. But we've approached our county commissioners 8 separate occasions and notices, and they have refused to take any action whatsoever to give people the safe water. So when we started looking at why would 5 people on a commission decide that the people that they represent, and there goes back in the people that were selected to represent them, but they were put in that office to represent the people, and they're ignoring it. So we started digging deeper. And when I started digging deeper, I was really surprised because in the Florida Constitution, Article 2, Section 5, Paragraph B specifically states, every elected official in the state of Florida, county or state, before entering office, shall give a surety bond according to the law. Now, a little research into our Constitution, that statement in itself was a conditional statement that our forefathers put in. And so it has to have a matching statute. And of course, statutes are not for we, the free people. They're to control the government. So it has to have a statute to go in harmony with that part of the Constitution. So it says, according to the law. Then when you look in Florida statutes, 137.04 specifically states county commissioners must, and it uses the word must, have a surety bond. Well, when I did the research and went back and found the meeting in 2008 where they voted to do away with bonds because they were using a statute, a Florida statute, to give the commissioners the right to choose in their county who needed a bond or not. And that action put them in contempt of the Florida Constitution. And so effectively everything that's happened since 2008 in the state of Florida and the county of Sarasota is null and void because we have not had a legitimate commission set in office because they refused to get bonds. So we turned it over to the Attorney General, carbon copy the governor, and with the announcement Thursday that the state is going to be doing a DOJ audit in Manatee County next to Sarasota, we have a little glimmer of hope that we may have some good guys coming forward to help us clean up this mess. But the Constitution, it's so easy to read, and so many people have perjured themselves because they want to follow the Constitution, and now, hell, they've never read it. I mean, yeah, they just don't read it. They don't understand it. And so we're trying to do this. We're getting ready to release a campaign tomorrow, and we're going to advertise this petition all across the state of Florida. And we're going to wait to see what our Attorney General does. But it's a conflict. We've got them on contempt of the Constitution. We've got them on perjury. You swore you knew what the Constitution was when you took office. You didn't. So we're moving forward.
That's a very, very big point. And I've had on before with me Sheriff Mack, head of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. and I've had one of your opponents on, Louis, Sheriff Bianco. And one of the questions I asked them both is, as you go through this, and this whole matter that we're dealing with has to do with our U.S. Constitution and each state constitution. When you are enlisting and swearing in officers, they're taking an oath to uphold the Constitution, both federal and state. And yet most of them don't have a clue, have never read either Constitution, and don't have a clue as to what they're swearing to. So how do you, in good faith, put these people in charge of keeping the peace when they don't know what they're supposed to be doing? Or for that matter, more importantly, exactly who it is they're supposed to be representing first. Governor.
So if you would ask the rank and file, which I have done, who's your boss? 9 times out of 10, the answer is a superior officer. That's a big effing problem,
Yes,
right? That's the crux of the matter right there,
exactly right.
because their boss is we the people. In fact, if you notice, it looks like all of us probably grew up through the 70s. So we used to see police cars that said what? Protect and serve.
Yeah, see that anymore?
You don't see it. You don't see the cars say protect and serve anymore, because because the people that are commissioning the cars are part of the corporate stronghold, and therefore they're eliminating language that slowly moves the rank and file away from abiding by the Constitution and serving we the people. And it's intentional, right? So it's up to us to strongly reacquaint them with the Constitution. And I've had several conversations with officers. I had a heated conversation with Sheriff Mack in Arizona about 1.5 2 years ago, and just reacquainting him and others with the Constitution and how important it is. Their oath doesn't matter because they're taking an oath to the corporation in their mind.
Yep.
Right. And I've even had some proof in Arizona and some other places that some of the oaths they're by and large are being rewritten. Did you know that? So if you ask for the oath, it's not even the same oath that you would think they take. So Tom, you're dead on. That is the crux of the matter. I have to give you some props. You're doing something. I've had conversations with many common law folks, and their hearts are in the right place. But I challenge them because there's a couple Achilles heels I see to this. And I even warned Mark ahead of time. I said, hey, I don't always get along with common law and General Assembly folks, because I point out a couple things, and you've already nailed one. So I appreciate that. And what that is to me, if you listen to President Trump over the years, he says we must do things legally and lawfully. That is a communication to us to use that BS corporate law and common law together, marrying them together and parallel at the same time, in my opinion, because if you parallel them with it, where you have to go through their legal stuff and use common law language and then do our affidavits or writs on the side at the exact same time, they have to now respond. Because what happened is when we only use our common law language, they don't respond. Even some of the best people in regards to bonds and pulling bonds within months figured out, they got all the baddies got together and just said, we're just not going to respond. We'll pretend like we never even got the letters, right? So the fact that you're doing it appears to do legally and lawfully at the same time is what I've been begging people to do for the longest time, because that is the communication I think that we have been missing.
Yes.
Which is absolutely incredible, because you have to work in pair. We're trying to create a parallel society, in essence, is what we're doing. So in essence, you have to work at both sides at the same time and then drive them together, force them to come together. So they have to answer your common law questions. And I think it's brilliant. I applaud you for being the first person I've talked to. Now, I've talked to several common law people. Most of them will agree to me after I break it down, which I think is fantastic. But you seem to already be down that road, which is brilliant. And this is not a pat on my back. It's just something I recognized a long time ago. And I've been waiting for somebody to understand that they had to be tied together.
Absolutely. Well, we've tried the other way. We've been in existence for 2 years, and we've been trying the other way. We've sent our petitions, we've sent notices, we've sent default notices. We haven't gotten anywhere. And so it's the whole issue of getting people to understand, and even with this issue on the bonds, by them not fulfilling their obligation to the Florida Constitution, they're also running a charter county, which is in direct contempt of Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution about running and providing a Republican form of government. So we've got them on a couple of different cases, and now we're going to getting ready. This week, we're going to be preparing, going after the supervisor of elections, because if you look at the constitutions, both of them, there is no delegated authority in any constitution for a government entity to do the elections and count the votes. And in Florida, our constitution specifically says the elections by the people shall be private and direct. Private and direct. Paper ballots, no electronics. It's got to be counted, hand counted. And so they're not even complying with that. And there's no delegated authority for supervisors or elections to run the elections. So we're going to get in and tackle that this week, but we have to do it through the Attorney General because there's no other way. We can't go to the local courts because they're all corporations. We can't do anything else. And as far as constitutional sheriffs, there's over 3,400 counties in this country, and I guarantee you there's probably no more than 150 of them that have true constitutional sheriffs. Because the giveaway question to Sheriff Mike is, can you arrest anybody without an indictment or a presentment from a grand jury as it's stated in the Constitution unless you are a witness yourself to a crime? Can you arrest anybody with that? And his comment was, sure. You can, but you're in violation of the Constitution. We don't know that. People just don't know. So my hat's off to you. Got a heck of a road, but I would make the offer anytime you run up to anything out there, give us a call. We'd be glad to advise to what we know. And if we can't do it, we'll find somebody that can help. So good luck in that round.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you see, you just hit on another point there, Tom, which is something that I've railed about for a long time. And I even said it in the intro. You know, a lot of this boils down to we the people. Now, right here, we're representing two very, very deep blue states and one quote unquote red state, New York and California and Florida. And yet all three states seem to be 100% clueless as to both the federal constitution and the state constitution. On top of that is the absolute crux of the problem, which is the American people waiting for somebody else to do the work.
Yep.
And people have to be made aware that they have to do some reading. We're not talking, going out and turning a car over by yourself. We're talking about doing some reading. And allegedly, all of us, especially at our ages, know how to read. You can get a copy of the Constitution anywhere. You can get a copy of your state constitution online with no problem. Read, learn what your rights are, and move forward with that. But I can imagine what you must be going through, Lewis. And as far as the General Assembly is concerned, you have what, 65 registered members, Tom?
Yeah.
And maybe 15 to 20 that show up at meetings.
typical organization of that number. I will make one comment when you said we all know how to read. We actually went to school when we had teachers that could teach us how to read and to write cursive. So I remember that. So now it may be a little harder for people to read, but you're exactly right. You have to understand what your rights are. When our country was originally founded, and you go back to where our forefathers were, when they started building this country, they knew what their rights were. They taught them in school. And you'd go up and violate somebody's rights, you're going to get punched in the nose. And people today, we get our rights walked all over, and they say, well, take another step, just keep on coming. And we can't do that, folks. We just can't. You've got to understand just the very basics. And if somebody tells me once again that they want to fight for the democracy, I'm going to throw up on them. Democracy is the first step of socialism, and we just got one hell of a lesson on how that works. And again, I'll just ask the simple question. What country do you pledge allegiance to when you say the Pledge of Allegiance? What type of government?
Not only that, yeah, what did you pledge to?
Yeah. And do you pledge to the republic for which it stands? Did that say democracy in there? I was early school, so I can't mix the letters up to make the word democracy spell Republican, and it's tough. It's tough.
Well, the kids can't read or write cursive, but they know how to write curses, which is a whole other thing they're learning in school and on the web and everywhere else. But Louis, you're dealing on a statewide level. And no offense to all of our people from California who are watching, but you're also dealing with a large population of blockheads. Now, I know that just like New York, most of the state is red, but your large population centers are as blue as the blue bloods that ever came to this country. What the hell are you going to do? How are you going to approach it?
Well, it's funny because I was just writing about big lie number 5 when it was time to come on here, and big lie number 5 is unity is impossible and independent can't win. That's big lie number 5, and I'll just read what I started to write. I said we're daily bombarded with control and intentional division by the deep state actors, liberal versus conservative, Democrats versus Republicans, red versus blue, with the main narrative being the two sides have nothing in common. The division, I believe, is completely intentional. Why? Because there is no conqueror without division.
Yeah.
And it's that easy. So what's the truth? If you were to do a Venn diagram, you would find on California's core real issues, there's over 80% agreement, probably more. So if I were to ask, let's go with the blue. You have the whacked out DEI rainbow colored hair crazies out there. I'm sure taking 7 antidepressant medicines. So you have that ilk, of course. There's no penetrating that. I still believe that's 4 or 5% of the population. But if you talk to a regular Democrat, in general, many of them are just brainwashed. Because let me ask a Democrat this: do you support child trafficking? No. Do you support high cost of fuel? No. How about exorbitant real estate costs? No. How about poisoned food? No. Do you support very high taxes? No. Do you support parasites in government stealing your money? No. Do you support an unbalanced budget that's about ready to blow up? No. Well, look at that. We're in agreement, because the reality is the controllers get us to focus on everything except what we agree upon. And the reality is I would bet that we agree upon 80 to 90%. And my goal is to drive together what our agreements are. Let's work on those, because they're such a big deal. I can prove to you within 1 minute that California's profits from human trafficking outpace the #1 industry of information and technology in the state. Prove it. I can prove it. So do you really think that liberals want that? No, they don't want that. They're just not aware of it. because the news media, even the conservative news media, they play the same game. They're all on the same team, and that team is divide and conquer. That's the team that they play for. So my message, believe it or not, although very conservative, probably more conservative than most Republicans that are running, is about where can we have an equality of message together. Do you want to get these things fixed? Okay, then pay attention. And tell you what, the primary is on June 2nd. So follow me, pay attention to me till June 1st. And if I'm wrong, June 2nd, you go vote for another blockhead. Right? But I have a feeling that we're going to drive it in the right direction so people understand the only reason why they're hearing hate from conservatives and hate from liberals is purely just to keep us divided.
Absolutely.
And that is where I'm going to penetrate the message and win.
Great.
Well, I've said it for a long time already. Every time a topic like that comes up, like the old shake and bake commercial, and I helped. So,
God,
my career.
Well, when we look at the constitutional knowledge of our general public and our elected officials, I can only point back to our education system has completely failed us entirely through this whole process. Because
can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
Because words matter. Have they failed us, or have they intentionally manipulated us?
Well, they've intentionally manipulated us and failed in teaching us, and that's giving us a correct history. And it's not just the existing administration. This has gone on for so many years. And so, and I was elected. I was a county commissioner, a supervisor in Virginia, as we call them, and for 12 years. And so I didn't know any of this. But what I did know is when I first knew something didn't look right or smell right, I had to find out. So I've spent 5 years digging this out and understanding, and it goes back to the basic principles of what our forefathers established for us in this country, because they had lived under so many years of tyranny from the king. So they knew all the games that could be played with the government and how they doing it. And how many people today realize that when you go into a courtroom, you're actually going into a corporation boardroom instead of a hall of justice? I've got the DUNS number for the Florida court system. I mean, it's so obvious. And how do we get people to understand this? So we have to hammer, we have to keep positioning, we have to keep bringing it to people's attention. And we have to give faith in our Creator that He's got a path for us. We're on this path because of our Creator anyhow, because He selected us a long time ago. We didn't know we volunteered for this, but we're here. So we're doing this fight, trying to get our people awake and to understand, because we can't continue. When I look at this county, when I look at it happening here, and it's happening all over the country. I've got a hospital system that's owned by the county that's always they use special taxing districts. They've created every type of tax. And the governor of Florida is now really considering how to reduce property tax, because he's doing an audit at the county next to us that over the last 6 years had an 86% increase in revenue. And he wants to know where it went. They didn't reduce taxes. So where did the money go? We've got savings accounts in these counties here that are topping $1 billion. Well, there's statutes and constitution that says you can only tax what you need. You can't put $1 billion in a savings account. So we got a lot of work to do.
Let's get a little state specific here. Say that 10 times fast.
Okay.
Let's get a little state specific here. You in California, Lewis, you got more problems than you could shake a stick at. And just if you look at,
I can't even shake a tree at them.
You can't shake a tree because it'll probably burn and then start more wild.
That's right. No fire abatement.
But if you look at the fire situation, and basically when everybody makes the joke that California has 4 seasons: wind, rain, fire, and mudslides. And it's mostly because of the way that the politicians have absolutely ignored the problem while raising people's taxes and raising money, just like they did for the fire victims in that major concert that just happened. And yet that, and along with the wonderful rail system, the money disappears, and yet the people sit there and they'd rather bash the ICE agents than go after the people who are playing with their money. And this is the biggest argument that I have with people when it comes down to this and taking back control of their local governments. You could be as charitable as you want to be, and you could be as welcoming as you want to be to whomever you want to be. But when they make the choice for you as to whom you are going to be charitable to, I have a real problem with that. And that, to me, is one of the big wake-up calls, because this is why monetarily, fiscally, both on a governmental level and on a personal level, we're in the hole that we're in. How do you see, besides what you said before, waking up these people and getting them on the side of common sense?
Well, common sense, we have to recognize, is not common. That would be step one. Step two is I use this a lot, is I talk about a paradigm shift in order to open up people's minds. And what I mean by that is, for example, my first film, which is over 5 years ago now, I opened it up with a paradigm shift, and I explained to him, I said, okay, we know now that the Tuskegee experiment was real. We know MK Ultra was real. And I was talking to the normies. I wasn't talking to everybody else. We know that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was real, so on and so forth. I think I brought up 5 or 6 real issues that people would look back at the time, and they were all being called conspiracy theorists, right? But those are facts now. So I asked the question, I said, so knowing those are facts, and I get the agreement on there first. I said, knowing that those are facts, is it possible that some conspiracies today may be real? And then people goes, well, I guess it's possible, because you want to ask questions. I mean, I use the Socratic method. And then so I go further into it, and I go, well, let me give you an example. A few years ago, nobody would have expected chemtrails and weather manipulation to be real, yet now there's multiple states that are passing bills to outlaw chemtrails and weather manipulation. So clearly we know that that's real now, right? There's so much more like that we're hearing with COVID. I believe we're going to have disclosures on 9/11 in the next 2 months that we're going to blow people's socks off, where they're going to actually see it. So you have to get their mind to be open, that things may not be as it seems. And what I tend to do is, when I talk about election fraud, I say, did you know that Republicans are committing election fraud? Because that sets them off, because that's the last thing that they would say. What are you talking about? I go, absolutely. There's several cities that Republicans, well, do you believe that to be true? Well, of course it is. Okay. So do you think it's just the Republicans, or do you think maybe Democrats or the deep state are doing it also? Well, maybe you have a point there. So this is about the way we have to start communicating to people. So we have to talk to people as if we love them. That's number one, right? And have an intelligent, intellectual conversation with them. But that intelligent, intellectual conversation also has to be probably at a 3rd grade level. And I'm not demeaning anybody. I'm saying let's not use too many multisyllabic words, because we have to have basic conversations that everybody understands. Right? That's part of communication.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. So these are the types of things that we have to take on ourselves. We also have to understand, and here's where I empathize with people. As a society, we have been intentionally propagandized to such a level, and I have to include everybody in there, that we do not think the way that God has intended us to think.
Absolutely.
Right. For some reason, we think Candy Crush, New Jersey Shore, right, or watching a football game is more important than protecting kids from pedophilia. And that is because the method, we are constantly being bombarded with messaging that actually, and chemicals and bad food and crazy air that actually suppresses our discernment level. So if we understand that that's what we're dealing with, we have to, in my opinion, do exactly what the baddies did to get us there. And we have to slowly acclimate people to the conversation. So in my belief system, I speak to people where they're at, not where I want them to be. And then slowly we can get, but that takes patience. And it's hard to have patience. And we all grew up in a microwave society. Well, that's nothing compared to our TikTok society, right? We're in the TikTok age now, and now messages have to be under a minute for people even to pay attention to them. But try running a campaign on that. That's driving me batty. So, but I'm going to have to play the game, right?
Yeah.
So my point is we all need to, we being anybody that wants to communicate these ideas, we have to be a little bit more patient with the people that we're talking to and understand and empathize that their intent and the bread and circus they have been fed, right, is going to take us a little bit to overcome. So I believe in planting a seed and let God water that, and people will start to wake up. But if we want to truth barf on somebody, in most cases, you've lost them for a long time.
Exactly right. And that's part of the philosophy that we've taken with this petition for redress to the Attorney General, is we want to start someplace and getting somebody to recognize. Because when I did my research on this, I went back to 2008 and found out, and one of the staff members made a comment that there's only 6 or 7 counties and municipalities out of 250 total municipalities in Florida. There's only 6 or 7 that are now doing surety bonds to protect the people. And this was in 2008. So this is how these things started. When I go back and look at the video of that meeting, the staff got up and explained to the commissioners that it was an antiquated law and didn't need to happen anymore because they had liability policies that would cover their laptops or their Blackberries. And so this is how far it went back. And they were talking. And so the staff said, yeah, we're covered. We don't need to do that. Never once, even with the county attorney, and I got a comment about that, but neither the staff nor the attorney mentioned the Florida Constitution. Now, what is the epicenter of evil in every county that we come into? What is the epicenter of evil?
The media.
County attorney. You go with the county attorney's office. When I look at the Sarasota County budget, I got this amazing clip the other day of 157 positions in Sarasota County, salaries over $100,000. And so I took the top 100 salaries, and out of the top 100 salaries over 100,000 in Florida, 10 of them were county attorneys. The top county position was, they publicized it as $130 an hour. That's $270,000 a year. Second highest paid, county attorney, $260,000 a year. And all of the other attorneys underneath of them. And they still let that organization go into contempt of the Constitution because they didn't do their job. So we've got attorneys on the list too. They're coming up next.
Yeah. And that's why they let that happen.
Oh, yeah.
It's because they're overpaid. So it's a payoff. It's a very clean payoff. You do our bidding, you get the money, we turn a blind eye. You're good to go.
Well, I'm still waiting on Governor DeSantis, but when he came in and made the statement, you've had an 86% increase in income. I want to see where the money is.
Yep.
That's why they're doing an audit. And we know that that county has got problems. That county is just like Sarasota and Port Charlotte, where all of the commissioners are directly employed or related to development here in Southwest Florida. And
Now,
so,
one of the things that I wanted to get into a little bit here, and I brought this up at last Tuesday's meeting with you, Tom. So this is a question for both of you and exactly how your interpretations of how it would work. These people operating supposedly have to mandatorily have a bond and do not, which makes everything they've done pretty much so null and void because they're operating illegally.
and unlawfully.
And unlawfully. So if you go back to, as you had stated the other day, Tom, 2008, which was the national real estate crash, and people who had their homes taken away and all other aspects of loss that people suffered, does that in turn make situations like that null and void? And how can the people fight that situation? Because that devastated, I know in Florida, it devastated a lot of the West Coast, major towns, just about killed Fort Myers. And you're dealing in situations whereby these people, from an artificially created situation, were raped and robbed.
Yeah.
Now, if these people who put this in play were operating illegally and in an unsanctioned manner, do the people have any chance of redress? And how would they go about getting it?
We're going to find out in Florida because we've got that exact issue on the table right now that we're doing research and our guys are looking at it right now. And we're definitely going to go after that. I mean, you got to look at the fact that since 2008, you got to look at it, maybe not that session, but we're talking about 15 years. And so you're looking at the fact that they're paying their commissioners $200,000 a year. So you're looking at $1 million. You're looking at $15 million that they've overpaid these people, and the attorney let them do it. So who's going to go after the attorney? You know, we've got him cold. I've got him even on the tape saying this is an action item. You need to take a vote on this. And so the attorney was encouraging them to go in contempt of the Florida Constitution. So I love it.
How does it work out in California, Lewis?
Well, we do have the strongest constitution. The challenge that we have right now is the Constitution is completely ignored by the court system. And when I say completely ignored, I mean it actually seems like it doesn't exist. So we have to take another tact at that, and that is fixing the elections, which I'm happy to say I believe some good work's being done right there right now. We may have a lot of surprises because if we're going to be honest, this is not an instant fix in California because these fraudulent elections have been going on for so long that the deep state players probably run 80 to 90% throughout all of the California systems, right?
Yep.
We have a couple things that will work to our advantage. When we get the elections repaired, and I do believe we're going to do it, and I know that sounds like a Pollyanna vision, but based on what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, there is some specific real constitutional principles that were broken in our elections that now become a federal issue. And if President Trump's team is going to do what I hear that he's going to do, now we not federalize the elections, but we have the elections under federal scrutiny, and we can start prosecuting. So you may wind up to a time where many people are just eliminated wholesale. I know that sounds like a Pollyanna vision, but these are facts that can happen legally, and fraud does vitiate everything. It really does. The problem is we're running under the most corrupt system here. California, I think Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New York, and Arizona and Nevada, those are the top of the top in my opinion. in corruption. You kind of have to throw away Washington, Oregon, because they've been faking their elections before time started. Um, but the reality is we do have some recourse in regards to that. And what I believe that we need to do is we need to look at something that the Supreme Court laid it up for us, and we haven't touched it yet. And that is the reversal of the Chevron deference decision. That is the most powerful Supreme Court decision, I believe, in the last 50 years. And it's been completely ignored. And the reason why you're not seeing anything in it, because it hasn't been challenged yet. And what I mean by that is somebody needs to step up and say, hey, what you're doing is in direct opposition to this decision. They need to go up, bring it all the way up to the Supreme Court, because it's going to get turned down. We know it's going to get turned down on the lower courts and the appellate courts. Bring it right into the Supreme Court and have them rule on it and say, yes, this applies. Now that will be a final ruling right there, where now it can be taken and used as precedents in hundreds and thousands of other issues across the country, because that decision alone prevents bureaucracies from virtually making any decision that can harm the people. That's how powerful that is. But we've been ignoring that. And that is about the most constitutional republic-like decision that we've had in a long, long time. But I think we're ignoring it because I believe that we don't understand that we need to challenge it. And what I mean is you need to take something, a fine, whatever it is that's levied, or some bureaucratic overreach, and bring it through the system so they can rule on it and say, bam, this does apply. They've overreached. They cannot do that. Now you have a decision that everybody can use, right? So that's another tact. Here's the challenge: is myself and our team have all these great ideas, but somebody's going to have to step up. Tom can't do everything. Mark Lewis can't do everything. I came up with some ideas that people lauded in Florida, by the way, Tom, that people said, oh, these are fantastic ideas. And I heard some people say they're going to step up, and they didn't. I'll give you an example. I said, instead of counting on the school board, create your alternate school board and have you get the parents and the students involved to go to that school board. And I guarantee you're going to get more people than they get to show up at the regular school board. Then you have a consensus that you vote on, and you parallel it with the other school board and say, you guys are completely out of touch. You can't do this. This is what needs to be, and this is what we're asking for, and put pressure on them. But people are, that's a fantastic idea, but they don't do it. You can do the same thing on a board of supervisors. Same thing on a city council. You create your own. Tom, I know for sure you know about and probably created grand juries. There's no difference between doing that than what I'm suggesting. We must do this. And it doesn't matter if y'all are watching and you like President Trump or not. Put all that aside. I will just give you a fact. January 20th in 2017, when he was standing in front of a military contingent, he did not say, I gave it back to the government. He said, I gave it back to the people. We gave it back to the people. And we need to take accountability and say, we dropped the ball. And now it's time to pick that ball up and do something about it, guys. You can create these parallel organizations literally to combat the corporate organizations, and you mark my words, they will end up being recognized because you'll have the will of we the people that will be stronger and larger than them. And one thing I have noticed in virtually every case, when they cave, the baddies cave, is when we have a direct pinpointed message and everybody is on the same page. You take 50 people into a school board meeting, and I guarantee you, and they all say, we will not have pornographic material in our libraries for our children. And all 50 have that same message, they will cave. The problem is you get one person up there that wants to prayer. Another one wants to do this. And another one wants to talk about rust that was on their neighbor's lawn. And another wants to talk about this. If you can get organized and understand that under pinpointed force, the cabal falls all the time. And I can give you so many proof positive cases that where this works. So we, the people, need to take the ball, get organized, and do it ourselves. And I plead with people, please, this is for the children. Please do what we can to organize. And you're going to find out. This is why I say constantly to people, I say, wear your favorite message, your patriot message on your chest. You will be surprised how many people walk up to you and you think you're on an island. They're going to walk up to you and go, I agree with that. Guess what? That's somebody you should be exchanging phone number with immediately. And another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And we will find out really quick how much power we, the people, have when we walk in to any corporate structure in force with the same message. They lose.
Yes.
And you see, we've kind of gone full circle here. This goes back to the initial issue, which is A, educating people, and B, getting people to step up and do what needs to be done. Because, I from personal experience, having been for my entire career a union member, about 4 different unions. And when I realized after a while what was going on and how A, the unions were all businesses and they weren't interested in the benefit of the members. They were interested in saving their own asses and making whatever they could make under the table. I tried, and you have zero negotiating leverage with any of these companies because they'll screw each other out of every single nickel that they possibly can until it comes to dealing with labor. Then they all unite together. But the one thing that I learned is in trying to create one nationwide entertainment union, you can't get 2 people to agree on the same thing or get 2 people to get off their butts and do something together for the benefit of the people ever. So again, we've come back, like I said, full circle. How do we go about cattle prodding people and waking them up to the point of seeing, no matter which side of the fence you're on, seeing if you want to have any chance of an actual existence in this world, never mind just this country, you've got to start to take a stand and do what's right and not push forward your own agenda, not push forward your own thoughts. Like you said, in regard to, the rust on somebody's lawn or somebody left their garbage cans out too long. Important aspects of daily life that more than anything affect our kids.
Oh.
Where do we take that step? Go ahead, Tom.
Well, a couple of things I wanted to go back to. Louis, you brought up a couple of very good points. On the petition we sent to the AG, I was fortunate enough to go back and find an 1877 Supreme Court case where the Florida Supreme Court found a clerk of the court in Duval County that had won re-election, but they failed to renew their bond. So they didn't have the bond while they were in office, and the Supreme Court removed them. So I've got that as support of the Florida Constitution. And when we send it to, but I want to touch on something else that, and you're talking about schools and the children and the kids. We've got an issue that Sarasota County in Florida has been designated as the top trafficking city in the state of Florida. And when you tell people this, they go, I don't believe that. Well, when you look at the topography and where Sarasota is located, and you look at the history with all the development and all the growth and how it happened, it's very easy to understand that. But what is difficult to understand is the complacence, the absolutely ignoring every aspect of child abuse. And I'll even go as far as saying I have been into the foster care facilities of this county and they suck. And so we've got one of the richest counties in the country. We've got a big part of that, and I want to make another comment, but we've got people with money coming into this county, and how do we get them involved unless it's something of their own doing? But we have got to wake the people up to understand that children are our future. Children are going to be what's running this country. And the climate that we have right now, that it's okay to destroy these children, it's not acceptable. And people say, oh, I don't like it. I don't like it. Well, we're going to be pushing really hard in Sarasota to make some differences on this, but we're not going to stop. So that's one of our biggest issues in Sarasota, is how do we protect our children and our kids, and how do we keep them out of harm's way when we have a county government that doesn't even have the sense to look at the Constitution and take the responsibility and put a bond in place to meet the requirements. If they can't do something as simple as that, then how the hell do we expect them to take care of our children and our families in the future? We can't. So we go back to general jural assemblies. We're following the General MacArthur rules that he set up because he saw it coming years ago. So they put this process in place. We've got 28 states now that are following this procedure with different counties, and there are no parties in an assembly. An assembly is the community coming together to take care of your community. And yes, we have a common law grand jury as well. And we're getting ready to go to our first common law court of record, because we're going to push this because it's time. And we're tired of waiting, tired of looking at all this stuff. And we know that President Trump and the team's taking everything down nationally. But there's been a fairly well-known general, last name happened to be Flynn, but he's got a slogan: local action brings national reaction. And that's, by golly, what we're going after right now is local action, because we need to have these people stand up and pay attention. They're robbing us blind.
Yeah. And I actually say the micro will fix the macro, which is very similar to that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. We start at the bottom. We get the people. We get these people that are in office to understand you are the servants. You are the people that are serving we, and we are the ones that are in control. You can go that for a little bit, but you also have to remember they're all corporations, and what we tell them, they're under corporate rules. So it really doesn't matter. But if they were in a true government, then we'd have better leverage with that. But corporations, we have to know that that's going to end really soon. So we need to be prepared, and we need to have our assemblies in place to be able to stand up and take over the control of our counties. Thank you.
How about in California, Louis?
Well, it's interesting. With my marketing background, I think one of the solutions, I'm kind of a out of the box thinker, and I think it's kind of a guerrilla marketing solution. I mean, just if we think about it, the biggest challenge that we have is, Tom nailed it, is people are either in denial or they just don't know what the real problem is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or their personal finances are so important they ignore it intentionally, which I can tell you is exactly what happens with law enforcement. I've had conversations with law enforcement. Louis, I agree with you. We need to do this, but I can't lose my pension. You know, I actually had a guy on the way. I don't know if we were on the way to Nevada or Arizona, wherever it was, and a nice guy, and he was a police officer, and he says, well, if I can get 9 or 10 of my buddies to stand up against our bosses, we would all do it together, but I certainly won't do it alone. And I get it, you know what I mean? Because they're afraid to lose everything. And I asked him, I said, so when does the livelihood of a child that's getting raped become more important than your pension? When exactly does that happen? And it was 2 officers I was talking to. One was, you can tell, was a completely corporate deep state officer, right? He didn't like the conversation at all. And the other guy contemplated. He goes, no, he goes, it's a really good question. And it's something we have to consider, something we have to think about. I literally, on the border, I had the same conversation with Border Patrol. One guy through a fence that secretly had a conversation with me because he was so afraid that his bosses, it was under the cover of darkness, literally. And I was interviewing him. Same thing. It's all about the pension. So what can we do to draw attention to these issues? I don't want to give away one of my trade secrets that's going to happen in the campaign, but what I will hint at is something important. In Sarasota County, you have approximately, I think, about 100,000 homes or residences, I should say,
Right.
with like about 3.2 people per residence or something like that, approximately.
Right.
So I can tell you, if people were to knock on doors and leave behind, right? On average, in 5 hours, one person, even having conversations with some people, can actually have a leave behind at about 100 residences in that time. So if you do the math, right, and you have 10 people to do that daily, right, that's 1,000 residences daily. So in 100 days, everybody would get some type of card on their doorstep, whether it's about human trafficking or whatever you want to do, and they would suddenly have the information. Why is this important? Because it doesn't take that many. If you can imagine, if you had 100 people that were doing this, why is this so important? And it really is. Because if my math is right, it takes 1/10 of 1% of us to stand up to make a difference. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. I believe there's over 300,000 residents in Sarasota. Or let's just take a county or a city out here in California. Let's say a city has 50,000 people, right? If 50 people stood up with the identical message, we would make the difference immediately. So that's 1/10 of 1% have to stand up. So if we can get information out to almost 100% of them, and you only have 1/10 of 1% to take action, that's the difference maker. That literally is the difference maker. I'll give you one of my favorite examples. And my friend Brian Isley and somebody I'm getting to know, you may know, called Lee Dundas, right? They went into Orange County, California, which is an absolute complete deep state controlled board of supervisors. I have proof from it from 2018. It's undisputable. They're completely controlled by the deep state. They went in, they were going to be that so-called conservative county was going to pass a COVID passport mandate, vaccine passport. Lee Dundas and Brian put together about 2,500 people and brought them to a board of supervisors meeting when they were going to pass that. They signed up a bunch of them to speak. By the time they got to a little over 700 speakers, they rose their hands up, right? And they said, they conferred and they said, we've decided to table this issue. Now, why is that so important? They were going in there with the intent to make vaccine passports mandatory in the whole county. When they said table, they knew at that time it would never come up again. Why is this so important? You had 5 deep state actors at the time that had pinpoint pressure on them. Pinpoint pressure, all with the exact same message, that became suddenly, we the people, came more scary than them having to go back to their deep state controllers who they're being paid off by and threatened, and said, we couldn't get it done. Can you imagine what that would take? That is a microcosm of what can be done. That's why I say the micro fixes the macro in every city, every town, and every county. When we, the people, realize that we truly do hold the power, and ultimately we are sovereign, we have to claim it first. And we're not going to give our sovereignty away to some paperwork. We can't do that any longer. We stand up in unity, even under the corrupt corporate systems. And many times they cave right now. The challenge is we don't think we hold that power. So the job right now, which is the hardest, is convincing people they do. And this is why you have to give examples and tell stories like I just did. It's amazing to see what happens in these cases.
Our forefathers kind of dictated, that the government is supposed to fear the people, not the other way around.
I'm going to tell you, by the way, I believe it was March or April, President Trump through whitehouse.gov actually posted how important a well-regulated militia was. I'm just saying.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
Assembly, an assembly, a grand jury, and a militia is what you need to operate your county.
There you go. So I'm just, if that's not a clue, I don't know what is.
Well,
but
when he
this-
first got
Yeah.
elected, he made the speech. He said, I was elected not to take power, but I was elected to give power back to the people. And that's what he's doing. And you've got to take everybody's saying, why is it taking so long? Why? You got to really understand the complexity of this system, but you got to use the system to crash the system. And then you can scrap it all and start back new. And that's what we're going to see with the financials. We're going to see with everything that's coming out in the very, very future.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, Tom. This is why people say under this current corporate structure, why would you run for governor? I said, because if you can get somebody on the inside, it's gonna fix itself a lot quicker than if somebody's chipping away at it at the outside.
That inside person makes the deal. But I've dealt with commissions before, and I've also known the trick where they've tabled the issue to get rid of the crowd, and then they can come back and take it off a table at the next meeting and vote on it, and not have the crowd. So they do tricks like that. That's how they do that. So, but getting the people out is the issue. Have to do that. And I like your suggestion on the leave behind. I've ran a couple of campaigns myself, and they've become very helpful. And you bringing it back up just sparks an idea, Mark, we can get to the girls, so we can get that this week. So good,
and you can, Tom, you can contact me offline. I'll give you a specific way to do it, inexpensive and extraordinarily effective too, which I've already used.
Great. I'll contact you. We'll do that.
Right.
So, it's funny because this part of the conversation is an excellent segue into this. When we talk about people getting together to do what's necessary, one of the great divides has been jural assemblies, common law, tactical civics, both with the same end game in mind, but yet it seems though the two can never seem to get together and work together. And this to me almost goes back to the same mentality of what I went through with the unions, where one union would talk the talk, but they'd never walk the walk and work hand in hand with the other unions to unite and make a strong hold and get both of their populations together to work together toward the common goal. Louis.
I agree.
Okay.
And we've taken a mission on this last 2 weeks is to reach out to our fellow patriot groups, and we're trying to get them to get us involved. At least let us be the enforcement arm of your group. We're not trying to take people from other groups. We just want them to understand the effectiveness of common law and how to use it properly. And we have that knowledge, and we're going to start showing through these petitions how we actually make it happen. So got a lot of work to do. It's good advice, Mark.
Louis.
So, wow, you're talking my language right now, and I'm gonna be easy.
Yeah.
Don't have to be.
The Achilles heel of the common law network that we have right now is that they don't network.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not a problem. I
Yep.
tell you what, we work together. We get our like-minded people together.
We
We
have
get the
to.
people that are truly interested in saving this country, and the people that are interested in getting off of the couch and
Mhm.
putting some effort into it. Those are the people we want.
Yep.
Gotta have 'em.
So there's big picture, there's small picture. The big picture is, do we want to fix our country? Do we want to bring it back to a constitutional republic? If the answer is yes, the assembly I believe we should be having is an assembly of common law thinkers together to create some specific avenues that they can agree on. Same thing I'm trying to do is unify California to some specific avenues that we can agree on. Now, what that takes, Tom, and this clearly doesn't include you, that takes the leaders to put their damn ego on the shelf.
Yes.
and understand that just because you put 10 years into something doesn't mean you can't cut bait on it, because the reality is it's more important to be unified on this message and moving forward, because as long as the common law factions are fractured the way they are, and they are fractured, nobody could tell me anything different. The fact that they're so fractured, I guarantee you probably 30 or 40% of them are deep state actors, and they're intentionally fracturing everything too, because
Absolutely.
the controlled opposition that's inside of the common law movement is there to prevent you from unifying. So there has to be some strong voices like Tom saying, hey, I'm willing to step back and listen, right? And let's get together and let's see what we can agree upon and move forward. No egos, guys. If we truly want to save our country, we can't have any egos into this. I think I'm at 12, 14 categories of things I'm attacking in California. I've already am starting to form six teams on individual categories, because I know that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I sure can find the smartest people to consult me, and I'll have to pay attention, and then I'll make a decision based on that. So we have to figure a way to get together on this.
Yes.
I think Trump has set the table for us, but and if you guys are Q believers, that's fine. Just know that the plan was in Q 42 times. The people are in the drops 147 times, because that's the true plan, is we the people figuring out how to move the ball forward here.
Well, we think we've got him moving forward with this petition to the Attorney General. If he stands up and does his job, then we will be able to start moving across the state of Florida, because we'll put this show on the road and we'll go to every county and we'll set up assemblies in each one of these counties. I need 13 people to establish an assembly. There's a set process. There's paperwork we have to do, but it can all be accomplished in 60 days and have them up and running, and they can take control of their counties. And if we do it.
Yep. Looks like Tom froze on us. What he was getting at, though, and what was going to be my next question, is there are 3,144 counties in this country. And I know that Florida's Sarasota County, and I think there's one in California, and I think there might be one in New Jersey. That still leaves 3,141 counties in this country that don't have general assemblies, people in support of common law. We need to get our populace active. We need to get our populace together, working together. How do we move this forward so that we can make it happen? I know I kind of asked that question before, but how do we really go about incentivizing these people, understanding that this isn't, creating another political party. This isn't creating another idealism or anything else. This is for the benefit of we the people, which is what this is all about.
I would say we need a community organizer like Barack Obama.
You couldn't find a better example than that.
He's the epitome of a community organizer. It's tough, man. Here's the reality. And I like to find a positive spin to everything, because I believe that's the best way to move forward. But the reality is, I think because of the way we've been conditioned, that people are going to have to get hit in the pocketbook before they're willing to make a difference in many cases. And I believe there's going to have to be some type of systematic financial crash for people to go, okay, now I got to pay attention and I care about what's going on. Either that or some solar flash that's going to change everybody's mind instantly. I don't know. In the meantime, though, I feel like I'm Sisyphus pushing the ball up a hill constantly, because I'm I'm pleading with people, just do something to make a difference. Go walk your neighbor down to the grocery store because she has trouble getting down there on her own. Go mow somebody's lawn. Pray for somebody. Knock on your neighbor's door. There's things that we can do because the micro surely does fix the macro. And the reality is, there is a collective consciousness, whether people realize it or not. And the more that we work for a common goal of good, the more other people feel that and start to do the same. So you may not think you're making a difference, but you are the drop in the pond. You're making a absolute humongous difference. You just may never see it. So just take an extra 10 minutes out of your day and say, what could I do to better humanity? That alone, I think, is going to start to push the ball forward. And that resonates with me internally. I get the truth bumps when I say things like that, because those little baby steps become habits, as you know. And then those habits become something, and they become something that blossoms into something amazing. So literally, just take some baby steps yourself, folks. Just give a little extra. I know you feel like, oh man, I've given it all. Hey, take 10 minutes off of TikTok, and study something and forward it, right? Take all Mark's great work and just say, you know what? I decided for 1 week straight, I'm going to forward everything that Mark puts out. You don't know who's going to see that. You're like, oh, I don't have any reach. Only 3 people see my stuff. You never know. But it's also, there's an energy behind it. And the energy behind it is huge because there is a collective consciousness, right? And we are working in a quantum realm right now. So you have to work with inside what I call the quantum field to make a difference. And this is how we manifest our reality. And this is not separate from prayer. If I believe in God, I pray to God, I manifest through the Lord Almighty. So these are not weird principles. These are actually working within the quantum physical realm, that we can do a lot of work just by changing our mindset and doing a little bit different every day. And it's pretty exciting, really, if you think about the huge ramifications to something like that.
Well, in regard to
I
that,
bet you Mark didn't think I was going to get all woo-woo on him today.
I get so touched when anybody gets woo-woo on me. But in regard to that, and this is one of the things I've thought about a number of times, because a lot of this movement, and most of us are in alignment, but a lot of this movement is spiritual. And one of the things that we've been fighting against and over for decades now is the movement away from spiritualism, moving away from God. And how many more people get triggered as we start to speak in that direction. And it does make a difference what your religious beliefs happen to be. Because no matter what your religious beliefs happen to be, there's one God. And that's who we all hopefully have in our hearts and try to speak to. So it's just a matter of the people who get turned off by this. And if we start to speak in that direction, immediately go into, married hearing and sit there and nod their heads and aren't listening to a damn thing that you're saying. So like you'd said before about the rule of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And you go and you try and not dumb it down, but keep it as simple for most people to understand as is possible. Is it important, or do you think that it's a non-issue to keep the spiritual end out of the discussion when you're going in to talk to people about this unification? Because in my opinion, I believe it's very important.
Yeah, I don't shy away from it at all. Here's the reality. When people get turned off by somebody saying, I listen to God or I do my work for God, right? That's generally an ego play, because they've been convinced that somehow listening to a higher power affects their ego, and it means they're weaker. Well, they've been controlled, in my opinion, and they've been convinced and brainwashed to believe that, right? Our scientific industry has done that better than anybody. Like you can't be a scientist and believe in God at the same time. Like, all right, let's how about we just assume that all these nanoparticles and molecules and atoms were created by God. So we're actually on the same page. So, get off your high horse for a second and just understand that. But I think it's very, very important to interject spiritualism into a conversation. And I believe that although maybe 20% of people will disagree with you, 30% may not admit it, but agree with you, and 50% will agree with you. That means you're still speaking to the 80%. And maybe if you lead by example, you can convert. And I'm not saying to any religion by no means, but you can convert that other 20% or some of them to say, you know what, maybe there is a higher power. Maybe things would be a little bit different if I would look in that direction. Every night before my kids went to bed, right before they went to sleep, I would say double LWI, and that's live life with integrity. So the last message that they had in their head before they would sleep is, okay, I need to live life with integrity, because integrity is what you do when nobody's looking. And then I always tell them, but God's looking, right? So these are important messages for sure. I don't think we should shy away from it at all. In fact, I believe we're going through a revival of sorts in our country as we speak. And that doesn't mean Christianity, because I know many of us are Christians, and I'm not saying just a revival back to the Lord. And I know for the Christians, they're going to find Jesus, and somebody may find somebody else. Right now, I wouldn't worry about what religion somebody is selecting at this moment. The fact that they're finding in touch with God, that's what's really important. And if you really believe strong in your religion, well, then they're eventually going to fall over to that side anyways, if that's what you believe in. So I think it's very important that people find God right now, because this is truly biblical, what's going on. I think that's not even disputable at this point.
Now, I know one of your opponents, as we mentioned before, Sheriff Bianco, is a constitutional sheriff. So he believes, and he's stated as much so, his position as far as running things according to the federal and state constitution. In a situation like that, now he deals with Riverside County. You're dealing with every county in California, as he would be if he were elected. It's important to get these jural assemblies set up in every single county, in all of those 3,144 counties nationwide. What advice could you give people as to how to organize and get these jural assemblies set up in their localities?
Well, I think I actually have the number one best solution, and it's an app that I'm creating. We are so close to releasing it right now. It's called Freedom in Action. And the Freedom in Action app, in fact, we're readdressing it right now for California specifically. So there's actually going to be a map that you can click on into your county, which is, it's costing me a fortune, but it's going to be worth it for everybody. And I do all this stuff for free. It's not like I'm asking for anything. By the way, go to hermsforkelly.com to donate to my campaign. I'm just but what's very important about this app is an amazing geo-targeted app. So you think you're on an island, just wait until you get on this app and say, you want to see what's going on in your county, in your city, in your state. You go on here, you can geo-target. I just want to look at my county. I want to look at 10 miles away from me. I want to look at 50, 100 miles away from me, or I want to look at the whole nation. Why this is important is because you're going to start seeing these conversations and people saying, hey, let's go to the Board of Supervisors meeting. Here's what's on the agenda, right? Let's go to the school board meeting because they're going to have trans reading hour. We all need to go there and protest. Suddenly, these people are going to be able to come together like this. And where else will that work? For assemblies. It'd be exactly same thing is if you have a general assembly, you're free to go on there. People can visit your meeting, make their own decision in regards to that, and it can grow like wildfire based on this. So I believe I have the solution. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and it's this close to getting there. And I breathe heavy because every time I think it's that close, something happens. But I think we're close. If I had an unlimited budget and I wasn't nickel and diming to put this thing together, it would have been done a long time ago.
Now, because when people go to take knowledge or sometimes lack thereof into their own hands, and they go, let's say they're addressing a school board meeting or they're addressing, the town commissioners, et cetera, county commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's very, very important to understand your state's constitution as well as your rights under the federal constitution. Is it a necessity? Because a lot of people on these boards serving as county representatives, not necessarily county legislators, but county representatives, either have legal backgrounds, obviously not in common law, but have cabal law behind them, and usually somebody on the board whispering in their ear, like a town legislator or something whispering in their ear, they can't do this, blah, 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 blah. Is it important, besides the understanding of your rights under the constitutions, to have some form of a legal mind in with you when you're doing this?
Yeah, I think what you should do is you should have somebody that understands procedures with inside these boards. Are very important because they create their own procedures and they also create traps with inside their procedures so they can control free speech. So it's very important that you understand what their procedures are. So if you just have one person that's an expert in their procedures, doesn't have to have a legal background. They just understand how to they run their meetings, but also what their intent behind their procedures are. We can get through it. And I would also say, when I address Board of Supervisors meetings, which I've done a few times, I almost always find something that's important. I said, I need this on the record. I said, this is on the record because everything that you say is put on the record can be used in the future moving forward. I even did it in Maricopa County. I noticed when they were certifying the elections, I think this was, I don't know how long ago I was there. Is it 2020 or 2022? I don't even remember. Anyways, when they were certifying the elections, no, it's 2020. This Stephen Richter, I believe his name was, who was in charge of the vote. I don't know if he slipped up or he's telling on himself, but I could tell there was 280,000 votes based on my calculations. That was exactly what they manipulated. And I said, I just need everybody to have it on the record that there's 280,000 votes that were mentioned here. Those are the votes that need to be investigated. Sure enough, months later or a year later, it came out that there's 280,000 votes that people need to pay attention to, right? So I put that on the record on purpose. Now, letting them know that they work for you is extraordinarily important. Being respectful is extraordinarily important. That will not always prevent you from getting kicked out. I've been kicked out a Board of Supervisors meeting 2 times, respectful or nothing, but you get it on the record. Make sure somebody's filming you at all times. And I would say the most important thing is when you organize, make sure, and this is my favorite illustration. So let's say this is a 20-pound weight. Okay, you put that 20-pound weight on the crystal of the glass of your phone. It's not gonna break. Now, if I take this pen like this and then I put the 20-pound weight on that, you'll break your crystal every time. Why is this analogy important is because when you go into any of these meetings, you all should be organized with virtually the same message. Hammer them again and again and again and again, because when they know you're that organized, they have to pay attention. Plus, what it does is it creates a precedence of conversation. So you can say, look, we had this amount of people. This was 70% of your meeting. We're all talking about the same thing. Why has this not been addressed? So it gives you leverage that you didn't have before. So with as busy as I am, we're going to be trying to create all these processes that people can use inside these meetings, and when they address these corporate hooligans, and that's really what they are.
Okay, because that's something that we've seen a lot over the past 5 or 6 years, really, especially when it comes to school board meetings, community board meetings, et cetera, and inevitably they've either got the police there or the local sheriff's department there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and this is an issue that I've pitched to Sheriff Mack, an issue that I've pitched to Sheriff Bianco and others. If you're dealing with the county sheriff's office, which allegedly, and that's my favorite word in the English language, allegedly represent the Constitution and the people, not the powers that be of the municipality or the county, there should be unequivocally no question about them not being able to throw you out of a meeting for respectfully.
First Amendment.
Yes, presenting your point of view.
Yep.
And yet, in all too many cases, which is why it's very important what you said about having somebody filming it, taping it on their phones, and everybody's got a phone nowadays. It's important to have that there and to get your point out, because now not only are you showing, and there's that word again, the Gestapo mentality of a lot of these local governments and their boards, but it's also showing the failure of the local authorities, police or sheriff's department, to protect the people they have sworn to the Constitution to protect.
Well, actually, it's also very important that you get your officers on record ahead of time saying that they're going to protect your freedom of speech, right? And many people, if they're warned ahead of time, you are signaling them that we will not take anything less. And I believe many officers that go against the Constitution, many of them do not understand the Constitution, number one. Many of them don't even know they took an oath to the Constitution. But I believe many of them know they're doing wrongdoing. But if they don't get pushback and they believe that you don't understand what they're doing is wrong, they can get away with it, right? So it's important that we have the conversation with the officers that would be in charge of that district or county or whatever it is at the time ahead of time, and get them on record saying, no, I'll support if you behave like you're saying, I will support your freedom of speech. So when they don't, they could be held accountable. I want to use the word allegedly, and I hate to say it, Mark, but I have to get going here in a moment. But I want to use the word allegedly also. Allegedly, there are a few constitutional sheriffs. They claim to be constitutional sheriffs, right? But you can say it all day long, but your actions are what's most important. And we'll have processes coming out that will be able to score, not based on what just they say, but based on how they behave. Because I believe many sheriffs will say, oh, I'm a constitutional sheriff, because it's expeditious for them to move the conversation along and get you to go away, right? So it's very important that we don't just, like, I can tell you there's some tough talking Lindsey Graham type sheriffs, but if you look at their actions, they're feckless, right? There's nothing there, but they're on film, they're talking tough, and everybody lauds them as they're amazing. But the reality is they don't even follow their own rules, and they certainly don't follow the Constitution. So we're have processes that we're going to put in place through my Remember Your Oath program, which you and I talked about before. That's going to marry with Freedom in Action, and that's going to help us, we the people, hold them accountable to do their job, and most importantly, support them if they're doing it right. I mean, we get very upset and we want to get after the cops all the time, but the reality is, if they're doing their job right, they should also know they have somebody that has their back.
Absolutely. There's one more question before you go. Because of the fact that you're dealing with federal constitution and state constitution, and you have, each state has their own constitution, but pretty much so, am I off base in making the assumption that state constitutions overall, with certain exceptions because it's their own state, pretty much so mirror the United States Constitution?
Yeah, likely. They have some caveats inside there, of course. Some are stronger than others. The California state constitution is strong. It's just completely ignored. Unfortunately, California constitution actually gives we the people the opportunity to virtually vote on everything. And if you get a certain percentage of the vote, it becomes law. You can get so much of a percentage that even the governor cannot veto it when it goes through. That's a pretty strong constitution. The problem is the votes are faked, right? So we really don't know what the results of that would be at the moment. In most cases, we have to understand that the federal constitution is the law of the land, and that should take precedence in most cases. Now, the good news is the constitutional republic, as it's established, give the states a lot of power to make decisions on their own, right? Which is fantastic, because that's ultimately the way it should be. But we're not operating under a system that's been working for hundreds of years, 150 years at least, to my knowledge. It's not been working appropriately. It's been completely manipulated, and it's been intentionally just thrown off. A great example is, let's assume that you love President Trump. Well, the last thing that should be going on, if our constitutional republic was running properly, is him being involved in anything. Your president originally is supposed to be set up to do a State of the Union speech, enact the War Powers Act, and help with a national emergency. Other than that, they sign or veto laws based on what comes across their desk. Other than that, you're really not supposed to hear from them too much. Now, I give President Trump a pass on that, because he has to dismantle the whole system. So he has to use their same tools against them that they're using. Like, all these executive orders are ridiculous. We shouldn't have all these executive orders, but he's dismantling the system. So I understand what he's doing, because we are, in my opinion, in the middle of war. But really, if it was run properly, that dude you should never see. And I know it sounds weird, but that's exactly the way it should be run, because your state should take precedence. And the governor, as somebody on my team has renamed it for me, should be the guardian, not the governor. Should not be governing you. It should be the guardian of we the people, protecting we the people. So I like to look at myself as the guardian, doing my best to take care of we the people.
Brilliant words of advice. And that's an excellent way to look at it. So I don't want to hold you any longer. I know you've got things you got to do. I'm sorry Tom didn't pay his cable bill. So his internet just seems to have disappeared.
I appreciate that guy, by the way. First time I got to meet him.
He's good people. I've been doing a lot of work with the Saratoga County General Assembly, and they're trying to do some great things. And we just need more people to step up, which is the purpose of tonight's show. More people to step up and do this. And let's get all 3,144 counties having their own General Assembly. And let's really stick it to these cabal powers that be. So once again, Louis, I want to thank you for being here. For all of you out there, Yeah, especially if you're in California. There's where you find Lewis's campaign information. And if you want to contribute, even if you're not in California, I don't think there are any laws against that.
No, worldwide. Go Ireland.
So that's where you can find Lewis. Help him out. He's good people. I can tell you that from personal experience. And he makes a really, really good candidate for We the People. Hope everybody had a good time. Hope everybody got some interesting information. As per usual, I want to thank Claudia, Kat, Kerry, and Doug, who are the absolute best. Without them, we wouldn't be here. Thanks again, Lewis. Thank you, Tom, wherever you are. And hope everybody has a great week. And we'll see you again next Sunday for another Respect. Have a good week, everybody. Enjoy.